In this video I'm going to go through game 4 from Prep Test 67. Prep Test 67, game 4. All right, so this one is quite tricky. We've got, excuse me for that, we've got zones, we've got subzones, we've got uses for those subzones, and then we have the 3 different uses: housing, industrial, and retail. And the zones are 1, 2, and 3. Excuse me. So no subzone can be designated for more than one use. So essentially, if we have a subzone somewhere, that subzone is going to be one of these 3 uses. So a housing subzone is, like, we can just represent that with H. We don't actually need another symbol for that. So these are kind of just descriptors of the different types of subzones. Okay, so a total of no more than 3 subzones can be designated for each of the 3 uses. I think that sentence probably causes a lot of confusion. So no more than 3. Okay, so we've got a maximum of 3. Subzones can be designated for each of the 3 uses. So that basically means we have a maximum of 3 of each of the 3 uses or types of subzones. So our maximum, like in total, for the whole city would be 3H, 3I, and 3R. And once again, that is a maximum. Okay, so that's something to pay attention to, right? So we don't know that we have 9 players, right? That would add up to 9 if we had the maximum of every type of subzone. We don't know that we have 9 players, and we just have, a maximum of 9. Okay, the first rule is that retail subzones are not allowed in zone 1. Okay, so let's actually create a little diagram here. So we've got our 3 zones. Now in zone 1, we can't have any retail. All right, rule 2. No more than 2 subzones for housing are allowed in any particular zone. So in zone 1, we have a maximum of 2 housing, and the same goes for zone 2, zone 3. So overall, we have a maximum of 3, but we can't have all 3 in a single zone. So if we do have 3 housing subzones, then we're going to have to split them up, okay, into at least 2 groups. Rule 3. No more than 1 retail subzone is allowed in any zone in which a subzone is designated for housing. Okay, so we have a maximum of 1 retail if we have housing. So if housing, then we have max 1 retail. Okay. If we exceed that maximum, right? So if we negate a maximum, what we're essentially saying is if we don't treat that like a maximum, right? So a maximum is a ceiling. So if we go above the ceiling, if we exceed that ceiling, so if we have 2 retail or 3 retail, then we can't have any housing. Okay. Rule 4. Industrial subzones are not allowed in any zone in which a subzone is designated for housing or 3 subzones are designated for retail use. Okay, so we can't have industrial in any zone. So we can't have industrial if we have housing or 3 retail. So if housing, then no industrial. If 3 retail, also no industrial. So if we have industrial, then we can't have housing. And if we have industrial, we actually know we also can't have 3 retail. So what we could say there as well, if we can't have 3 retail, then our maximum would be 2 retail for that particular zone. So yeah, so this is the contrapositive here. This one is just a compound conditional. So if H or 3R, then no I. And here we also have a compound conditional. So we have if I, then both no H and maximum of 2R. Okay. Now how I got, so here we have similar format, right? How I knew that it had to be like this, and like that the if is here, and so this is the sufficient condition, and the trigger, and so it goes on the left side of our arrow, is because of the word any. Okay, so that indicates a sufficient condition. Okay, so that's one way to look at it. We could also say that the word no or the phrase are not would be indicative of a negated necessary condition, right? So we have that here, negated necessary condition, right? So here a maximum of 1R would also be, we can't have 3R, we can't have 2R. So a few different ways to kind of get to this conclusion about that, you know, this is the right way to draw out these conditional rules. Okay. But I would say that if there's any word that jumps out at me as indicating that this would work out as a conditional, that word would probably be the word any. We also have the word any in the second rule, so any particular zone. So if you're in a particular zone, then you have a maximum of 2 housing subzones. So that's another way that you could write it. So like you could say if zone and then just a particular one, any particular one, then you have a maximum of 2 housing. If you have 3 housing, then you must be dealing with not a particular zone. You must be dealing with like the whole board. So like while that's a little bit clunky, it does still work. Like there is still a way to interpret that sentence conditionally because it has the word any in it. Oh. Okay, so that's the setup for Game 4 from Prep Test 67. I would recommend trying the questions again now that you have hopefully a little bit of a better understanding. Hopefully this is helpful. If it's, you know, if I've confused things more, or if you'd like further clarification on it, then definitely let me know. I will do a few of the questions as well in other videos, but it's always good to try them on your own first. Okay, so good luck.